right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of the Global Reality right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thank you for being with us here today for this Thursday, April the 7th, 2011 edition of the broadcast. And we have a very special 2-hour broadcast for you here this evening. So thank you so much to everybody for tuning in and being with us. We're going to have with us tonight for 2 hours author, lecturer, filmmaker, just a real wealth of information, and somebody whose information I came across doing my own research, and a lot of things I came across from our guest today really spawned my own research and it's taken it in other levels and other places that I wasn't really looking at. So I think that's the gauge of whether or not someone's a good researcher or not, or is doing good work, because when it takes your own work farther than it was getting on its own, that can only yield positive results. So I am very pleased and happy to welcome to the show here tonight, Mr. William Henry. His website is williamhenry.net. williamhenry.net. He has a store up there as well where you can get all of his DVDs, books. He also has packages where you get a book and a DVD and various things like that, T-shirts as well, and supports his work and helps him stay out there going on lecture tours and coming to towns near you. And so please welcome today, Mr. Henry. How are you doing today, sir?
Very well, Josh. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on the program.
Oh, it's great. And I wanted straight out of the gates, I wanted to, as I was mentioning there in the break, I had come across a piece of your information that being from Dallas, Texas was really a mind blower for me. I'm 34 years old. I've lived here my whole life. And I heard an interview, and you were talking about how these stargates or these various representations of stargates are located all over the planet. And I heard you talking about how there was one here in Dallas, and that you had a friend or a person who was guiding you around Dallas who didn't even know it was here either. And subsequently, after finding that and going down there, it really is an amazing thing. So maybe we can just talk about that straight out of the gates tonight.
Yeah, that sounds great, Josh. Love Dallas, by the way. One of my favorite places to visit, incredible town. And yeah, I ever since, well, I guess around 99, 2000, when I came upon the Stargate imagery here in Nashville, where I live, as I'm out venturing around, I'm always on the eye or on the lookout for this Stargate art, Stargate imagery. We're talking about rings or gateway imagery that's starting to pop up in urban centers around the world, literally. And I'm looking for it, one, because it's very often extraordinary artwork, but two, because to me, it's evidence of a shift in our consciousness, an ascension, if you will, of our awareness. I mean, it's basically becoming part of our culture now, this concept that until just a few years ago seemed to be totally impossible, that we can travel through stargates and wormholes, that we can go from point A in the universe to point B as if there's nothing in between, and it represents an enormous leap in our awareness. So I ask people to ask the question, what's in your backyard? Here's what's in my backyard in Nashville, this extraordinary place called the Bicentennial Mall that we can talk about as well. And so I happened to be in Dallas a couple years ago. I was actually doing a presentation at the Unity Church with Dr. Michael Beckwith, and I was talking about this Stargate imagery that's appearing in various cities. And as you mentioned, I had a hostess, and I asked her if we could take a spin around Dallas. Let's take a drive and just see what we see. And so we went down to the area they call the Energy Center in downtown Dallas. It's called the Energy Center because this is where a lot of the oil companies are based.
Yes. And
we're driving along, and all of a sudden I see this spiral-shaped building that, to me, was a ringer for the Tower of Babel. I mean, I'm like, that's the Tower of Babel. I mean, you can look at any early, say, Renaissance depiction of the Tower of Babel, and you're going to get this corkscrew-looking kind of building, a tall cylindrical tower that corkscrews. And the key for me here is that originally the Tower of Babel, which is an episode referenced in the book of Genesis, it was built by Nimrod, and the concept was humankind was trying to build a ladder, tower, or stairway to heaven. Those were the original meanings of the word Babel. But at that time, the Old Testament God, Yahweh, decided he didn't want company, so he smashed humanity's tower and separated humankind by language. And it's something that still remains in effect even today. And after that, the Hebrew scribes changed the meaning of the word Babel from ladder, tower, or stairway to heaven to its present meaning, which is confusion, nonsense. Humankind build a ladder to heaven, a stairway to heaven. Nonsense. And so when I'm looking at this corkscrewing tower in downtown Dallas, which is, it's got a reputation about like where I live here in Nashville. Nashville's the buckle of the Bible Belt, and I'm sure Dallas is considered to be a very conservative place.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm wondering, okay, so why is a representation, a ringer for the Tower of Babel, sitting here on a corner in the energy center of Dallas? And so immediately pull over the car and say, let's go investigate. Let's go check this out. So we walk in this chapel, which the place is actually called Thanksgiving Square, as it turned out. We go inside this corkscrewing Tower of Babel, and inside is a whole museum dedicated to the concept of Thanksgiving, which was inaugurated by President Washington. And when you go into the chapel, you see this incredible piece of granite, a granite altar, and you look up in the ceiling, and here is this, it's called the glory window. It's a rainbow Fibonacci spiral that is spiraling upward into the heavens, if you will. And I'm looking at this going, this is an absolutely astonishing representation, not only of the Tower of Babel, but also the Rainbow Bridge that is discussed in so many traditions, the link between heaven and earth. So if that's not enough, we go outside the chapel, start walking around, and there's all of these inscriptions written in stone. They're actually the commandments, the 2 commandments that given by Jesus, the secret to eternal life. Love your neighbor as yourself, and love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. And what was fascinating about that is I had just been talking about those concepts in my presentation relative to what I call Stargate metaphysics, because you've been around this a while, Josh. I'm sure you hear about these guys that claim they have insiders that work in the higher echelons of the U.S. government and that kind of thing.
Sure.
And they tell these tall tales of the U.S. Air Force having this Stargate technology. And my point is, when you research Stargates in the ancient world, anyway, they make it clear that that there was a preparation that was undergone preparatory to going through these gates. There was a transformation. Humans did not go through those gates like what you see in Contact and Stargate and some of the other, I think, disinfo films regarding the Stargate phenomena. Instead, they were talking about humans transforming themselves into beings of light.
The fiery furnace.
The fiery furnace, exactly. Exactly, the book of Daniel. 3 wise men, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, put on their coat, their hat, and their other garments, which are symbolic of higher consciousness in the light body, and enter the fiery furnace, a zone of frequency, a gateway. They go in, the 3 of them, 4 men come back out. The 4th one's identified as the Son of God, and clearly seeming to be some kind of a gateway or portal experience. So over and again, there's a transformation that's undergone. And the key transformation that I've been able to kind of deduce from the 20 years of research or so I've been doing on this is that we have to become beings of light. We also have to become beings of pure light and pure love, because those guys that are out there controlling the gates don't want a little Neanderthal man out here with his nuclear missiles coming into space, a la the Vision in Stargate and inferred in Contact and elsewhere. And so this message right beside the Tower of Babel of love your neighbor as yourself and love with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul was just mind-blowing, because that was exactly what I'd been talking about just before we went down to this place. But that's not all that's there. As we continued walking around, off in the distance, about 50 yards maybe from the corkscrewing Tower of Babel with its glory window inside, it was this magnificent golden ring called the Ring of Thanks. And it's to anybody's eyes who's ever seen a version of a modern Stargate, that's clearly what is sitting here on the ground in Dallas.
Absolutely.
And most people have no idea that it's there.
No, they really don't. And I lived here 34 years. I never knew it was there. And it was mind-blowing to me after hearing you talk about it and going down there and actually examining it for myself, seeing the 3 different sized bells above it, as if it's activating some frequency. And there's no indicator as to where or how you activate those bells, William. Did you notice that?
No, I did notice that. Right.
It's very strange to me. So it's like, who has the power over this? Who has the control of it? But going back to what you'd mentioned about love, it does seem that everything in the world, everything in the system is designed to keep us from achieving that love, to keep us from achieving the power that we have to unleash our souls, our non-material bodies from this prison they're held in. I mean, it just seems that everything is designed to keep that from happening. What would you say about that?
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, I've wholeheartedly embraced the prison planet concept, and actually, it's just ancient Gnostic metaphysics that we're talking about here. They believe that our divine spark is imprisoned in the body within this matrix, and the object is to escape it. And the only way to escape it is to, according to these various esoteric traditions, is to recognize, A, that the human body itself is a stargate from the divine spark or soul's perspective, and it's meant to be transformed. And along the way, you become an immensely powerful being. And this is why they, call them the Illuminati, call them whatever term you would like, have sought to withhold these secrets from the masses. And they've done a very effective job of it for a very long time.
What did you think about the director of CERN a year or so ago saying that when you start working on things like these atom smashers and these particle accelerators, that you find things that you expect to happen and you find things that you expect won't happen? And they found that what they didn't expect to happen was that you could actually open up a wormhole and put something in it and take something out of it. Now, this is the director of CERN saying that. You had to have had a huge reaction to that, Mr. Henry.
Oh, absolutely. I visited CERN 2004. No, it must have been later than that, maybe like 2005, 2006, just before they closed it. And wanted to go have a look-see for myself because I was very interested in the symbols that were there and, of course, the potential for this. There had already been talk back then that what they were building was a Stargate device there. So I wanted to go have a look-see myself and just kind of get boots on the ground and see it, feel it, experience it, that sort of thing. And part of what inspired me to do so was Leon Letterman's book, the Nobel Prize winner Leon Letterman's book called The God Particle, in which he talked about what they hoped to one day accomplish at CERN. And he had a couple of remarks in the foreword to that book, which was a best-selling book. He said, first of all, he didn't much care for the title, The God Particle. His publisher put that title on the book. He said he preferred to call it The Goddamn Particle because the thing has been so elusive and difficult to see, or difficult to discover. So that was kind of funny. But then he said, you know, what we're really doing here at CERN and in our search for the God particle, which is the fancy name for the Higgs boson, he said, what we're really doing here is recreating a much older story. We're recreating the Tower of Babel.
Wow, I had not heard that. That's amazing.
That's in his own words. He said, this is what we're really doing here. And so all the bells and whistles went off for me at that point, and I had to go take a look at it for myself. And I was most interested in the symbolism there. I wanted to see what kind of things that the art that was around the particle accelerator there. Actually got to go into the giant cathedral of science, as they called it. I had a couple of things really intrigued me about it. The Atlas detector, which is the kind of the giant microscope that they're using to hope to detect the God particle, is an 8-spoked wheel. And that highly intrigued me because especially the Mayans utilized the 8-spoked wheel. They said the 8-spoked wheel symbolized the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And in their 2012 prophecy, they describe a serpent rope, which could well be a wormhole, actually, emerging from the center of this 8-spoked wheel, from the center of the galaxy. And out of this serpent rope, umbilical cord, will emerge their savior figure, the returning savior figure, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. And so what I had been doing is matching up this Mayan prophecy of the opening of a wormhole, which is symbolized by the 8-spoked wheel, with the 8-spoked wheel of the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. And so immediately as they fire up the collider there and start getting up to higher energies, the things, of course, immediately shut down virtually instantly. And what happened was a breadcrumb somehow or mysteriously landed on one of the cooling units, which is above ground. The collider is actually 300 feet beneath the ground to take an elevator down, but the cooling units are above ground. And what had happened is a piece of a breadcrumb had gotten on this cooling unit and caused it to malfunction, shutting down the entire collider. And what happened was that one of the info babes from CERN gets on in front of the press. They said, "What happened?" And she said, "Well, a breadcrumb landed on the cooling unit." And they asked her, "Well, how'd the breadcrumb get there?" And she said, "Well, we think it came out of an airplane." And I'm thinking, yeah, have you flown lately, lady? I mean, any plane that I've been doesn't have any windows that open.
No.
That was their explanation. We think it came out of an airplane. And so right away, you have these Russian mathematicians and scientists that come out and go, no. What's happened is this is a nefarious project, and a time traveler from the future, we think, might have dropped that breadcrumb there. Because, in fact, what they're building here is a time travel machine. And so that just kind of amped things up and was just kind of the process that I followed in looking into the Large Hadron Collider and the possibility that what they're actually building there is some kind of a Stargate or time travel device.
Well, what's highly interesting to me about the whole thing, Mr. Henry, is the fact that this seems to be not technology that's come as a result of human ingenuity. I mean, as you mentioned, there are very many references to this technology being around thousands of years ago, and it does seem that after the wars that we've seen, the places that we've seen them, such as Iraq, and then this year all the stuff breaking out in Egypt and then Yemen now, it does seem that there is a race to find all of the pieces for this missing technology on some sort of a timeline. Have you seen that in your research?
Oh, absolutely. I started working this aspect of this story back in '98. Actually, earlier than that, I should say. It was more like '91 when Saddam Hussein was rattling his swords and sabers, and we went into Kuwait. And what I started hearing then was from the sort of your conservative prophecy watchers was this recognition based on evidence in Baghdad that Saddam Hussein proclaimed and believed himself to be the reincarnated biblical king Nebuchadnezzar. And he had spent $500 million rebuilding Babylon during the 1980s in fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Before the Lord returns in Christian prophecy, Babylon has to be rebuilt so it can be destroyed. And so there were a lot of prophecy watchers back in '91 saying, well, here is the king of Babylon right here. A couple of fascinating things about this that intrigued me is that it was at that time and soon after that I started looking back into the book of Daniel, and in that episode we just discussed a moment ago, the fiery furnace,
yes.
Because it was Nebuchadnezzar who had this golden image of the beast, some kind of device, if you will. And I use the word device because it means tool, appliance, but device also means symbol. So I'm comfortable in identifying this golden image of the beast on all of those levels. It was some kind of a tool.
As both, some sort of effigy or statue that was also a device that could be used for something. That's what my interpretation has always been.
Exactly. So he's got this piece of hardware, but he can't make it work. He knows, though, that the three wise men in the Temple of Solomon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they have the software. They can make it work. So Nebuchadnezzar goes in, loots and levels the Temple of Solomon, brings the Jews back to Babylon and the famous Babylonian captivity. Ezekiel's with them, Daniel's with them, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego are with them. And I had been heavily into Zecharia Sitchin's work at that time, and one of the key things that I was most intrigued with in Sitchin's huge corpus of information was his interpretation of the getup worn by the goddess Inanna as she descends into the underworld and then reascends. She puts on her coat, which is called her pala garment, which means miracle garment. She puts on her Shagura helmet, which is a horned helmet that Sitchin says, literally translated, Shagura means that which makes go far into the universe. And she puts on her blue stones that cause illumination at her neck. And so I'm watching Nebuchadnezzar go into Jerusalem, bring these wise men back to the back to Babylon. I'm watching them engage in a wager. Nebuchadnezzar says, hey, I can't make this thing work. If you can, I'll convert to your God. And these three wise men say, you're on. And what they do is they put on their coat, their hat and their other garments. I'm thinking, okay, this is the miracle garment, and they're putting on their Shigura helmets that make them go far into the universe, and probably also their blue stones that cause illumination. Now, why would three guys put on coats, hats, and other garments if they're going into a simple fiery furnace? This doesn't make sense. Something else, something otherworldly perhaps must be going on here. And as we noted, they enter that fiery furnace and they come back out with one like, or actually the Son of God in tow. Now, we think automatically when you're talking the Son of God, we're thinking Jesus?
Yeah, right.
No, it's not Jesus. His name was actually Nebo, which is the origin, which means the royal one, Nebo. And in fact, this is the root of the name Nebuchadnezzar, the royal one. So Nebo is the one who comes out of this fiery furnace. And my speculation, based on the historical evidence, is that he wasn't alone. He brought his wife with him. Two, he bequeathed to this ancient culture vast amounts of what had to have been cosmic information. They built ziggurats for him. They built libraries to house the tablets upon which this knowledge was stored. So along comes Saddam Hussein, gets his ass kicked, pardon the expression, during the first Gulf War, but that's okay. He knows what the score is. He knows what's going on. He's working with us all along, probably. So he goes about this process from the early 90s into the early 2000s, amassing as much possible ancient knowledge as he can. And I started following this story in the art newspapers, Josh. This was the key place that was a tremendous resource for me as I'm following the actions of Saddam Hussein, because what he started doing is going to the World's Museum. He went to the Berlin Museum and said, look, you guys were here in the 1860s. You dug this place up. You ransacked our temples. You've got the Ishtar Gate from Babylon there in Berlin, and I want it back. Then he went to the British Museum and said, y'all were in here in the 1860s and 1870s too. You created up thousands of artifacts that are still in the basement of the British Museum that you have yet to display. Please return those to Baghdad, because I am going to build a museum of museums. And in my view, what I believe the actual WMD that were never discovered by Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld was this ancient knowledge.
I agree with that 100%. That's exactly where my research is taking me as well, Mr. Henry.
And so what happens is of course, as we all know, we make a beeline for the Iraqi National Museum. The doors are open. Artifacts are looted. Who knows what was actually there? The stuff is scooped up. And where it is today, I don't know. But back then, the art newspapers were saying,
I think his phone cut out a little bit there. I don't know if you can hear me, Mr. Henry, but your phone's cutting out. Well, that's a bummer. I'll just have to end it here and call him back. Hello, Mr. Henry, are you there? Okay, that's weird. Well, you know what? I told him we'd go for about 30 minutes and we'd take a break. So why don't I play some music, take a break, come back, and we'll reconnect with William Henry. We'll have him back up on the show. Great interview so far. Stick around, folks. You don't want to miss a minute of this show tonight. It's going to be a great one. Stay with us. This is the Global Reality right here. Back here with you on the Global Reality right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thank you for being with us here tonight for a special presentation for you on the broadcast tonight with our guest, William Henry. His website is williamhenry.net. That's williamhenry.net. He has a store there where you can support his work and get his books and his films and all kinds of just a plethora of information there. And it helps him to continue on his work just the same as we ask you to support us as well so we can continue. And so please go there and check it out. And also, he does live appearances as well. So check out his schedule, and he may be coming to a town near you. But before the break there, we got cut off, and we were able to reconnect with Mr. Henry. So we're going to pick up where we left off. But Mr. Henry, before the break, we were discussing Saddam Hussein, the acquisition of these various pieces from the different museums, and he was set to create the Museum of Museums. So I'd like you to continue on that point, please, sir.
Right. So, and thanks for bearing with me there. That's great. So this is kind of the pretext of the Iraqi war, and in fact, what's going on today, as it turns out, because they're obviously vitally interested in some of these ancient treasures. And Saddam was not only a treasure seeker and gatherer, but he was potentially a very important figure in biblical prophecy. And it's kind of just wild to think that, wow, we might have seen the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar during our time. What happened in my own kind of course of this is that this story of the Iraqi Stargate just went absolutely kind of viral, with lots of different people suddenly picking up the baton and talking about it, and it became kind of almost common knowledge that there's a Stargate in Iraq, and that's why, at least in the alternative circles, as an explanation for the Iraqi war. But what was always omitted was the real evidence of this. And to me, the evidence was what I was just describing a moment ago, was the discovery of the connection between Saddam Hussein and Nebuchadnezzar and this ancient knowledge. I mean, it got kind of crazy there for a while, Josh, because in fact we got cut off tonight. I was also cut off in 2000, must have been 2003, when I stated this on Coast to Coast AM. It had been George Nuri's first or second interview, and I dropped this story on the Coast audience and was cut off on Coast to Coast. And what happened, it was kind of humorous, because a lot of the listeners started writing into Coast saying, hey, you just censored William Henry. He was talking about something extremely important and telling us why we weren't in Iraq yet at that point. But I had predicted a few months before that if George W. Bush had been elected president, that they would be in Iraq within short order. And it turns out that they actually followed through on that. And you had some other researchers that started talking about this story as well. And I remember one in particular was citing this, and he was citing that he had secret sources in Iraq. And when I asked him about it, I said, what you're describing sounds exactly like what I've been researching and talking about. Lo and behold, I ended up being his secret source. And so it was kind of like, oh boy. So I just kind of dropped it and let sort of the amateur hour take over. But it was kind of, to me, really important that we get back and recognize that, at least during the Bush years, there was a lot of talk about them following following the Book of Revelation sort of as a recipe book or a blueprint, that these certain things had to happen at this time, and they were actually kind of in the business of fulfilling some of this prophecy.
Well, absolutely, and I know that the story goes that Babylon had to be rebuilt so they could destroy it again to fulfill the prophecy, because it wasn't properly destroyed the first time. So very well may be that's what they're trying to do. But I found one interesting thing in my research, William, on these exact topics. I'd found that this character named King Darius from Iran, who they carved this gigantic rock to be hissed an inscription in Iran to, and had some very interesting things in tie-ins with King Darius, and King Darius kind of being the one of the precursors of these bloodlines. And I found it interesting that King Darius had conquered Babylon, and he crucified Nebuchadnezzar along with 3,000 Babylonians. And I said, well, isn't that interesting? Here you have King Darius, who, for all intents and purposes, is the forefathers of the bloodline that later spawned the Bushes, and then you have 3,000 dead on 9/11, along with the public hanging of Saddam Hussein. I mean, these things, again, are not accidents. No,
I don't think they're accidents at all, and especially the way they discovered Saddam Hussein buried or crawled into that pit, and that was all Nebuchadnezzar imagery in itself as well. And so it just seemed like they were playing out this master drama on the world stage, and very few people in the audience actually knew what was going on. And who knows? I mean, it may be continuing today. A somewhat unrelated but yet related subject is what's happened in Egypt since January.
Absolutely.
And the activities of not just Hosni Mubarak, but also Dr. Zahi Hawass. I've been curious about him because there's been rumors, and they are rumors, and I'll just leave it at that he's been involved in perhaps some of this antiquities trading. And I thought it was really strange when the revolution happened in Egypt, in Cairo, and there had been that kind of mild sort of fracas in the entry into the Egyptian Museum. and there were about a dozen or so items that suddenly vanished. But what Zahi said at that time, which was intriguing to me, is that he said, those were just mummy robbers. They're coming in here looking for red mercury, which is an immortality substance. And he kept talking about that. He said that's the reason why they were breaking into the museum. These people are looking for red mercury, and he says it's a mythic substance. It's an immortality substance. And I'm thinking that's really interesting that he's popping off with that, because he shouldn't be talking about that unless it's a substantiated kind of a thing. I mean, this is the guy that knows exactly what was taken and probably who took it. And so later, when he's reappointed just this past couple of weeks, now he was the Director General of Antiquities under Mubarak, and now he's actually head of the Ministry of Antiquities in Egypt. Suddenly, Zahi comes along, and in his acceptance as the new Minister of Antiquities, he says, I can't live without the antiquities, and the antiquities can't live without me. And so as he's saying this, the press is automatically assuming, I think, that, this guy's just got an outrageous ego. This is typical Zahi speak. The antiquities can't live without me. But then as I got to thinking about it and rereading his statement in light of our conversation, Josh, you think, he says, I can't live without the antiquities, and the antiquities can't live without me. And it makes me think, well, this guy, what's he actually hiding? What's he holding on to here? What has he got stashed away? And he's saying, unless you reappoint me into this position of power, these antiquities won't see the light of day. Does it maybe even have to do with this red mercury immortality substance that he kept talking about throughout the Egyptian revolution?
Well, he's definitely a gatekeeper at minimum. I mean, I've always thought that through the years when you look at the blatant lies that he says when you do your own research into symbology and what these all these artifacts really mean. So I think that definitely he's very suspect when it comes to this. Also, I'm curious about the Discovery Channel news report that had come out just 24 hours prior to the all of the unrest breaking out on that Friday in Egypt that said that they had discovered these 2 new chambers inside of the Great Pyramids, William.
What?
You didn't hear about that?
No, I didn't hear about that.
Well, I'll have to bring it up and I'll send it to you in an email. But I have the it's a Discovery Channel article. It came out the Thursday before the Thursday night before the revolution happened, and it was describing these 2 new chambers that they found in the Great Pyramids that they did not know what they were used for. Within 24 hours, we have a revolution there, and
I was in Egypt during the revolution.
Wow! Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I was trapped in that with 24 people trying to figure out how to get them home.
Oh my goodness!
Which was a crazy story. So so I completely missed that because we were kind of like wondering, are we going to get to go home?
That's unbelievable. Well, yeah, I definitely have to send that news article over to your email after the show. But
well, you know that the Great Pyramid, it's been quoted that it's large enough for 47 more chambers the size of the King's Chamber.
My goodness.
So that's a huge, huge structure, and I mean, it's probably just riddled with chambers, and people have been suspecting that for a while. And so that's a very fascinating story that they're talking about.
Well, I have it here. I'd like to read. Great Pyramid may hold 2 hidden chambers. This was published on January 27th, 2011 by Discovery News. It says that now let me ask you this: you did hear that some of the antiquities that were looted during that time came from the era of Khufu, correct?
Khufu and Tutankhamun, yeah, as well as Akhenaten, yeah. Okay,
well, the front of this article, it says 2 secret chambers housing funeral furniture were discovered at the Great Pyramid of Giza. The furniture was intended for use in the afterlife by the pharaoh Khufu, also known as Cheops in Greek. Don't you think that's an interesting coincidence, Mr. Henry, that we would have these 2 chambers being found with this furniture the night before, and then we have the outbreak, and then that's the antiquities that are looted?
Yeah, that's fascinating. Sure is.
It really is unbelievable. So, red mercury as well. I'd never heard of that. Is there a story that maybe ties into this ancient technology or transcending the death of the physical body into the afterlife? Are there any things that you're aware of with that stuff?
Well, that's what we're talking about here, is that it's some kind of an immortality substance that might have been placed in the mouth of the mummy. It certainly has a magical quality, and it's never talked about is the thing. But again, here is Zahi Hawass, in the midst of this, saying this is why these looters are coming into the museum. They're looking for red mercury. And I just, when I heard that, I'm thinking, that is really strange because nobody knows about that stuff. So why is he releasing that into the public sphere? And so just makes me wonder if he isn't just kind of, it's another of those moment of bravados where he's telling us exactly, among other things, what they were looking for when they came into the museum, and that he is in the know about it. And if it is an immortality substance, let's just for conversation's sake, Josh, let's just go back to his statement that I can't live without the antiquities. I can't live without the red mercury. The red mercury can't live without me. And kind of the catch here is it's pretty well known. I started first hearing this when I first began going to Egypt back in early 2000, that when Zahi Hawass was in training here at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, being sponsored by the ARE, the Edgar Cayce people, that he made it widely known that he believed he was Khufu. he believed he is the reincarnated Khufu.
No, I hadn't heard about that. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, people that know him, that was his story. I am Khufu, and I'm going to be world famous, and da 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 da. And so that's part of his psyche. And so all of this, you can get as far fetched and carried away with it as you like.
Sure.
But the point comes back to, look at what's happening, as you're saying here, the eve of the revolution. And then suddenly you've got people going into the Egyptian museum that's unprotected virtually, and it's Zahi who would have been responsible for protecting it. In fact, he said the reason why he resigned was because he couldn't protect the antiquities. And then he comes out and he starts talking about this highly esoteric substance, the red mercury, and you're just wondering what's really going on here.
Well, yeah, there's definitely, and as you know, oftentimes when there is something afoot, these guys leave little clues and things of that nature, and I think that he knows full well what he's doing. My real interest here is the fact that these incidents that we have, as you mentioned, of robbing the antiquities, and going back to the footage that was shown on the BBC back in 2003 during the invasion, we had special forces of the United States breaking open the vaults of the Iraq National Museum, going past the decoys that they kept out in full view, and here they are busting into the lobby. And what was into this vault was very interesting to me, and I wondered if you had seen this and maybe could comment on it, was the fact that when they opened it up, the first thing they show when they go inside this vault are just hundreds and hundreds and thousands of genie bottles, the jinn, the spirits that were encased in these bottles. And I just wondered, William, if are they releasing this energy? Does this tie in with the technology they're looking for? I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
I think that could be a huge part of it, because those genies in the bottle could well be a key or a clue to how to actually release or ultimately utilize this technology. Those cylinder seals are loaded with information as well. Remember, they had also, just before the Iraqi invasion, the Germans had, they believe, discovered the tomb of Gilgamesh.
Right.
And no telling what was actually there, and certainly Saddam would have loved to have gotten his hands on that. So I think they had full knowledge of what was actually there, and the devastating impact of the release of this knowledge were Saddam successful. I mean, he was trying to stimulate a tourist industry in Baghdad. That was his ultimate aim with all of this. And he was going to have the Saddam Hussein School of Cuneiform Studies. He's basically tearing a page right out of Hitler's wish list, too, in terms of the gathering of this ancient Grail knowledge that the Nazis were doing. Saddam was doing the same thing with the gathering of this ancient Sumerian or Iraqi knowledge, and wanting to just kind of release this tremendous knowledge that, as I'm saying, could have well had a devastating impact on the Judeo-Christian culture.
What did you think the first time that you heard and saw about the Norway spiral?
Well, that was kind of funny because I had, in an oddball kind of way, I had predicted that spiral. When it happened, I had been in Tempe, Arizona, just a couple of weeks before that, talking. I was doing a conference with David Wilcock, Richard C. Hoagland, and Stephen Greer. And as you can imagine, a weekend with those guys, you're coming out with your head spinning, and you're tending to be a little conspiratorial and maybe slightly paranoid.
Yeah.
You know, and so I came home from that event, and my presentation had been about my book Freedom's Gate, The Lost Symbols in the U.S. Capitol, which establishes that the U.S. Capitol is a temple, B, it's loaded with Stargate imagery, and it's all about ascension and transformation, with George Washington taking the place of Christ as the ultimate exemplar of human ascension. And so I had walked through all of that information at the conference, and so that was kind of in my mind. And the painting that I spoke about at that event is the painting in the dome of the U.S. Capitol, which is called The Apotheosis of George Washington. It literally shows his deification, his transformation from a man into a God-man. So I come home from that event, which was the weekend just before Thanksgiving of 2009, and all of a sudden I had awareness of this video of a gentleman. I'm trying to remember his name right now. It's kind of funny. It's been a while since I thought about this, but anyway, this gentleman was talking about how the apotheosis was at hand, that world government was here.
Oh, that was the oh my gosh, what is that guy's name? He's actually a Knights of Malta, just as his father was.
Lord Christopher Monckton.
Monckton, yeah.
Lord Monckton. So I caught that video, and I'm like, he says, now the apotheosis is at hand. They're about to impose world government. And I'm thinking, now that's a very strange thing for that man to say, because the word apotheosis means to deify, to raise from a man to a God-man. Is Lord Monckton, does he not know the meaning of that word? Or is he dropping this word in this weird context because he's trying to suggest something? The apotheosis is at hand. Is he saying the ascension, the mystic rapture, the deification is at hand? What does that have to do with world government? And so I looked into his comments and followed through with that. And of course, what he was talking about, the context of that was there was that meeting coming up, the environmental meeting that was going to be held in Copenhagen.
Yes.
The climate change conference. And he was all fired up saying, we can't let this go, because if Copenhagen 15, the COP15 conference is successful, then world government is here and there's nothing we can do about it. And so I started following through with his thinking, okay, if he's saying the apotheosis is here, in other words, if he's saying the ascension is here and the world government is here, then should we also start looking for the fast-talking Antichrist that runs that world government and us into the ground? And if so, if that is what he is saying, and I'm just hypothesizing as I'm going along with this, if he's saying the world government is here and we possibly then should start looking for this world-beating, fast-talking, silver-tongued Antichrist, then if that figure's here, should we also begin looking for the two witnesses who are described in the book of Revelation? They're called the two prophets, the two olive trees, the two lampstands that also appear at this time and actually kind of duke it out with this fast-talking beast or Antichrist. And if we need to start looking for those guys, then here's how we want to start looking for them. These guys are believed to be Moses and Elijah. Well, the last time we see Moses and Elijah together is they're at the transfiguration of Jesus. When Jesus takes the disciples up to the top of the mountain, reveals himself as a being of light, Moses and Elijah manifest as if out of thin air. And in Christian art, when at the transfiguration and transfiguration icons, Jesus is shown with Moses and Elijah on either side of them, but Jesus is shown in an open, often purple gate. And the way I interpret this, it looks like a stargate. And so I concluded this article after working through all this by saying, should we start to look into our skies for some kind of a purple gateway, a stargate, or a wormhole, in other words? It isn't, 8 days later, 9 days later, suddenly, yeah, the apotheosis is at hand. World government is here, and there's a spinning spiral above Norway. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's what I've been talking about here. And immediately what caught my attention is, as you may remember, on the internet, you saw website after website saying a Stargate opened or a wormhole opened over Norway. And it was commonly accepted that that's what that was. In fact, it was so commonly accepted that nobody paid attention to it. They basically said, well, what's for breakfast?
Yeah. I made a little short mini documentary on that as well, and put some information there. And I was really shocked at how little traction or little interest it seemed to generate. When to me this was a huge event, especially with Obama there in Switzerland getting the Nobel Peace Prize at the same time. I mean, these were huge revelations. Exactly,
and it seemed like, okay, well, if you're, some people think, well, are you suggesting Obama is the fast-talking Antichrist? I'm not saying I'm saying that, but I am saying, look at what happened in connection with this event. You had, as you're saying, Obama goes and gets the Nobel Peace Prize. Will Smith is there with him to interview him afterward and plays a key role in all of this. But the bottom line is that the world accepted on that day that it was not the official explanation of a rocket that people accepted. They accepted the idea that a wormhole opened over Norway.
And that's, the video that came out from that, I think was very telling, because some of the stuff that was shot from the ground, you hear people screaming in horror and terror. I mean, I don't think this would be something that would generate that if it was just a rocket or anything else. I think people felt this in a way beyond just 5 cents material feeling. I think that people who witnessed this very well probably felt something very deep in their soul from this event. It would have to be something that would probably remind the human trauma, as you sort of mentioned at the beginning of the show, how we've been traumatized all these years and we carried this with us. I would think that would probably have had a huge effect on the people that did witness it.
Oh, I totally agree, and everybody that saw it online. And it left me kind of perplexed. It's like, okay, what's it gonna take if the real deal actually happens? And I'm assuming here that wasn't the real deal, although it might have been. And by real deal, I mean, what if a wormhole does open? I mean, the Mayans had seemed to have suggested this in their prophecy, to start looking for a wormhole in 2012. Well, what if it's not 2012? What if it was December 9th, 2009?
Yeah.
And you look at this and you're thinking, well, okay, there was a few of us that got a real buzz out of this, but now it's people have just gone beyond it, and you just wonder what would it be like if all of a sudden there was a major ascension or prophetic event such as that. How would we handle it? Would people even care? Where would people go with this? And so I think it was a good kind of training episode, really.
Yeah, it was a great example of how people only react to things in the way that either the intelligentsia or the priest class or the government or the news in general tells them to, and when they're not told to react in a certain way, they really don't even know how to process things. They just go on about their business. But I think the other interesting thing was that they had fired up CERN just about 24 hours before that, after it had been shut down for a long time, after you'd mentioned earlier in the broadcast. Yep. And so all these various coincidences coming up around that, I think, were just a little too hard to ignore. In other words, other people trying to explain it away with things like HARP and all that. And those explanations were never good enough for me, because
me either.
There was just too many other things connected to this. I want to know if you think that, because I believe this was a test run, and that possibly we're going to see more of these in the near future.
I would agree. I think it was sort of like sending up the bat signal. Let's just fire it up, see what happens, test it out, and now we know how it's going to go down in the event of the real deal.
Absolutely. Well, we're coming up on about 30 minutes here again, so we'll probably take a break here in just a few minutes, and then we'll come back and continue with our guests tonight. William Henry, his website is williamhenry.net, and I want to thank him so much for coming on with us, and there's a lot more for us to talk about. If you have any questions, I might be able to get some emails in tonight. If you guys want to shoot them over, globalrealityshow@gmail.com, and I'll see if I have time to ask Mr. Henry any questions from our listening audience out there tonight, and because I've got some more questions, some other things I want to get into and talk about here, because it really is really meshing with a lot of the research that we've done and talked about here on the broadcast. So tonight, our guest is William Henry. His website is williamhenry.net. We're going to take a quick break, come back, and we'll have more with our guests, folks. Stay with us. This is the Global Reality. All right, back here with you on the Global Reality, right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Hour 2 here of our special presentation tonight with author, lecturer, filmmaker, and all around just really deep researcher, Mr. William Henry. You can check out his website at williamhenry.net. That's williamhenry.net. Definitely go ahead and check out his website there. And there's all kinds of stuff there at his website. It's a very nice website, and it's got all of his speaking date tours up there where you can go check that out. He might be coming to a town near you soon. And if you support his work, maybe you can get him out. I'd love to have him do a presentation in Dallas sometime, and maybe we can get that going and make that happen at some point. That'd be great. But before the break, we were discussing in the first hour. We were discussing Stargates. We were discussing the ancient monuments and the ancient artifacts that have been looted and how they pertain to this secret knowledge. What I'd like to move on to now and get Mr. Henry's take on this is something that, well, really the reason I wanted to have him on is because I really enjoy his take and relate to his take on Ascension 2012, 12-strand DNA activation, the whole works, because a lot of people and these researchers, as you know, as our audience is quite aware of, a lot of people, when they talk about these topics, they get into it just nonstop fear and they twist things around. And of course, the Mayans never said it was the end of the world, just the end of the known world, but that gets twisted and turned into these things where I believe they're trying to corrupt the power, the ancient power of manifestation, and use that to get us to manifest negativity instead of positivity. And I'd like to get your take on Ascension, the whole process, the whole thing, Mr. Henry.
Great. Well, where do we begin? I guess I can talk about. I've been doing 2012 research, I guess, since around 2000 or so. It seems like, and have befriended John Major Jenkins, who is one of the key 2012 researchers, and tried to stay in the loop with a lot of these guys. And then I finally put out a presentation called Stargate 2012, which my take is, or the area that I specialize in when looking at 2012 is I tried to pay close attention to the symbolism that was utilized by the Mayans, and that led me into some really fascinating avenues, really, that I think people would be intrigued by it. And that is when the Mayans were talking about an alignment, the 2012 alignment with the center of the galaxy, they would refer to it as the sacred tree or the cosmic cross, and described it as a moment in time when a channel would be opened and a higher energy would emerge from the center of the galaxy. So, and then it would become a moment of rebirth, renewal, or as John Jenkins calls it, cosmogenesis, renewal. So right off the bat, we have the symbol of a cosmic tree, the sacred cross, which is an alignment of stars and planets. Then the Mayans said, and we mentioned this earlier, that a serpent rope would be emerging from the center of the galaxy. And it's been theorized that this serpent rope could in fact be not just some kind of umbilical cord, but it's actually a cosmic umbilical cord, what we call a wormhole. So you've got a tree, and you've got a serpent winding around it. Is this story starting to sound familiar at all?
Yes.
Okay. And then this tree, from within this tree comes a magical substance that the Mayans called Itz. Itz was a very important concept to the Mayans. It's spelled I-T-Z, but it's the root of the place name, like Chichen Itza or Itzam or Itzamna, the Lord of the Milky Way. It's a very important root word, and it means the magical or blessed liquid substance of the sky. And the Mayans described it as an oily substance, and that it actually had something to do with awakening human consciousness, maybe even immortality. So you've got this tree that emits this cosmic sap, its lifeblood, that they called Itz, and you've got this serpent. And then you've got their savior figure, the return of their savior figure, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, emerging from this serpent rope or wormhole. So when you look at it from that perspective, it clearly does seem to correspond with the beginning of the Judeo-Christian tradition, which is the book of Genesis and the story in Eden of Adam and Eve, especially Eve with the tree of knowledge and the serpent of wisdom and the forbidden fruit, which in this case I believe would be symbolized by the Mayan eats. And that, to me, is what I've been focusing on with 2012, is looking at this and saying, okay, are we, as people have been talking about the past few years, we're entering into a region of the galaxy where the energy is just simply higher. And science is now actually measuring this. I mean, NASA is talking about a ribbon at the edge of our solar system that is totally mysterious. They're not quite sure what it is, but we're entering into it. So it seems that we're entering into this ribbon of energy. Other talk has been put forth on Russian research concerning all the planets in our solar system showing signs of energetic increase. So what if during this time there is some kind of a cosmic energy or cosmic substance that will be available that could greatly assist us as individuals, or perhaps better collectively as a species, as a civilization, in this process of awakening and transformation into higher beings? I linked this up with the Christian end time prophecy. I did a presentation called Revelation 2012, published that, 3 years ago or so. And what I had done there is I kind of take a Forrest Gump approach to this. I just try to keep things simple, in other words, as simple as possible. And so part of my approach is just take things literally. So what I did is I went into the book of Revelation, chapter 20, verse 12, Revelation 20:12. Turns out that's Judgment Day in the Christian prophetic tradition. That's the end of the world. That's when we're aligned with the throne and all the people are judged, the books are open, and this is when we see the return of the Christ or Messiah figure. And I'm thinking, if you've never thought of God as having a sense of humor, here's a great example of it right here. The book of Revelation, chapter 20, verse 12, is Judgment Day. And so what I've done in my presentations is ask people to think in this way, that I like to try to localize things. I mean, we don't know where the throne of God is actually located. It might be some far-off cosmic center. We really don't know. But what I try to do is localize it. So I ask people to think in this way. Let's think of our Milky Way galaxy as the temple. And we are becoming galactically oriented. We know now Earth is not the center of the universe, and the Catholic Church can stop murdering people because of that belief. We know that our sun and solar system, in fact, are not the center of the universe. We now know that our sun and Earth and solar system orbit the center of our Milky Way galaxy. And we now know, based on the latest estimates from NASA, which are about 2 weeks old, that there are probably around 500 million Earth-like planets in our Milky Way galaxy that could support life. And so what we're talking about now is we live within this enormous cosmic disk, and this is also representative of this shift in consciousness that's happening. And I cite this as evidence that, hey, we're changing. We're beginning to orient ourselves towards that galactic center. Forget about any kind of astronomical alignment. Our consciousness is being aligned to that center. So what if we think of the galaxy as the temple, and let's think of the center of the galaxy as the Holy of Holies of the temple? Well, that's where the throne is located. So that's where the throne is located in the Temple of Solomon anyway, which is another example of the temple. So if the center of the galaxy is the throne, then it appears that we are aligning with that throne, and we're beginning to think of ourselves as more in galactic terms. And all of this is this shift that's going on that I think is the ultimate evidence that 2012 is a real thing, and it's happening now.
Well, I absolutely. I mean, you can feel it every day, and I think if you have, as they say, if you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, you can tell that it's going on. I think people that are spiritually attuned and are very centered themselves spiritually are definitely feeling it. And I think that the brain dead masses who are unplugged from all of it seem to be going further and farther down into their depths. It makes me wonder, William, if this is a part of what was talked about. You know, how you would have one. A small subsection of the people that would be able to understand what this ascension was, understand what this revelation was, and the other half that wouldn't. It makes me wonder if those people that can't wrap their minds around these things that are going to happen as we get closer to 2012 are the ones that are, allegedly condemned to die in a lake of fire.
Well, I mean, that's a very good question and a very kind of alarming point. I mean, that's something I've been talking about with audiences ever since the 90s, when I started talking about like the Hopi prophecy, that as we get nearer to the balance or perhaps the alignment with the center of the galaxy, that only love can exist in our hearts, because more and more our thoughts are going to become instantly real. And so if we think a thought of fear or keep ourselves in fear, well, it's just going to be even more dramatically increased as we get closer to 2012. And what you would see with that is probably increased madness, not just people that are angry, and we are seeing a lot of angry people out there, but people that are mad in the sense that they can't cope with this world. They're going to start seeing things that they have no reference point for. They don't have a context for it, and it could well cause not only a split within our culture, but a split within the minds of these people that are living through this time. And that is not a very pretty picture. And so what I encourage people to do is just to soak up as much knowledge as they can right now about ascension, about our cosmic situation, who we are, and what we ultimately can become. Because as the Buddha always used to say, and I like to quote the Buddha in regard to 2012, we always think we have more time, but maybe we don't. And now is the time to really get inside the heart, clean out the heart, achieve as much of a state of lightheartedness as you possibly can, let go of bad karmic relationships, try to lighten your load as much as you can, because even Jesus said that the camel can't go through the eye of the needle. And what that means to me is that if we're dragging around baggage, emotional, spiritual, physical, or mental baggage, as we go through this eye of the needle that we're entering into now, that baggage isn't going to go with us. We have to lighten the load.
Well, that's the biggest part of all this. I think that what we've been lied to about this ancient knowledge, and I think that's been part of it, is because of the fact that we are, sort of trapped here by someone or something or some force in these physical bodies, and that's what I've always seen this as, is the end of that world, the end of us being trapped and enslaved here, and an end of the world as we know it. So. I find it very, very interesting that, again, that we're continued to be told to look at these things in a negative light and instead of in a positive light, and that's exactly how you put it there. These revelations, these great revealings, as what revelation truly means, are supposed to enhance us. They're supposed to make us better people. They're supposed to make us better as humanity, not send us down into the dregs of war and destruction and death and the rest of this. And I really identified that as really the source of, because people always, I know you get this question probably all the time, William, which is, with all this information, how do we attempt to change things? And to me, that's the key. The key is ending war, you mean? Well, no. I mean, trying to understand how we're able to take these revelations and the knowledge that they are giving us and to use that to become better people, to become better as human beings, and to try and get ourselves prepared and ready for what these great revelations are going to bring to us. Did we lose you? All right, Mr. Henry, are you there? Hello, William. Okay, looks like we lost him again. Very odd. Oh man, this is so weird. It just always happens. Every time I get on guests, I know we've interviewed Michael Tessari a few times, and it happened. I guess we'll go to another break. We'll ring. Well, no, I'll just try to ring him back here. This thing is, wow, that's so strange. And what's interesting is that every time we get disconnected, it does something to my Skype. And then when I bring up my system processes, my Skype is using some ungodly amount of process. Anybody else with me think that's a little weird? But we'll go to a break now. Right now, we got probably about 12 minutes left in this segment anyway. So let me reboot this and bring him back here. Hopefully he can try and understand what I was trying to say. What I was trying to say is that as we always talk about here on the show, the whole point in seeking this knowledge at all is supposed to be about how you use it and incorporate it into your person and being in a positive manner for the world, and then pass that on. And once we all are able to achieve that, we will no longer live in the world that they live in. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't crystal clear on that after saying that to him a couple of times, but I don't know. Maybe we'll see. But anyway, let me try to ring him back here. Our guest, William Henry, tonight. And it's been an interesting interview so far. Let me try to ring him back.
Hello?
All right, there we go. I think we're back.
Okay, good.
All right, so we are back here with our guest, William Henry. We've got about 10 minutes left in this segment, 10, 11 minutes left in this segment. And before the break, before we got caught off there, I was just mentioning that, to me, it seems that all of this knowledge and the seeking of knowledge and the reason that people are trying to seek and find knowledge at this time, it's very important to make of this what we can in the time that we have and incorporate it into our persons to become better individuals and pass that on. And I think that once that spreads throughout the world, it's going to be very hard for the power structure to continue.
Yeah, I agree. And what I try to focus people's attention on is the light body. This idea that we're in the process of transforming into higher beings, that we're all, when we're in our bodies, we're in a pupil form, we're in student form, and ultimately we're trying to metaphorically transform into a butterfly, which is known in the ancient world as the light body, the resurrection body, the star body, the body of bliss, the supramental body, the next level of humanity. And there's kind of a symmetry here that's going on, because going back to the book of Genesis, where all of this seems to have started, most people know the story of Adam and Eve and the serpent of wisdom. They get evicted from the Garden of Eden. The Old Testament God, Yahweh, places a gate at the east of Eden with cherubim on either side of the gate and a flaming sword in the center of it, and forbids humanity to re-enter that gate. So ever since then, we've been looking for the gate to Eden, which I'm convinced is actually a cosmic place, perhaps even the center of the galaxy. But the second thing that happened to Adam and Eve was that after they're evicted from the garden, God made coats of skin for them and clothed them. And that, as I'm reading that, I'm thinking, well, if he made coats of skin for Adam and Eve after they're evicted from the garden, what form exactly were they in when they were in the garden? When you hit the books and do the research, Judeo-Christian tradition tells you they were actually in light body form. So based on that, I'm thinking, well, okay, then part of the human objective is not only to seek the secrets of the gate, but two, to figure out how to get out of one of these skin suits, because the human body from this perspective is potentially a prison suit. It's like we're all running around in orange jumpsuits, and we've grown to really love them. But what we're supposed to be doing is learning how to transcend this skin suit and return to our original form, which is a being of pure light, and also likely a being of pure love as well. And so I've been spending, I spent probably the past 15 years trying to figure out the secrets of this garment of light and how it is in fact transmittable. That there have been legions of avatars, if you will, that have received this transmittable garment. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, it goes from Adam and Eve down to Seth, bypassing the line of Cain and Abel. It goes down through Enoch. Next thing you know, Nimrod possessed this transmittable garment, and he used it as a power garment, as a power cloak. And this is why people like the U.S. military would have an interest in this, because certainly if you've got one of these power cloaks, you're one of the most powerful people on the planet. The secrets of this could absolutely be weaponized. But when you follow it through in the esoteric or the high spiritual tradition, you find out that that Elijah possessed it, John the Baptist possessed this, Jesus possessed this, and it's been transmitted down through the ages. And what I'm wondering is, where is it today? How do we match the frequency of this garment? How do we get one?
Well, it's also talked about in The Secret Teaching of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. It's talked about there in regards to the adept or the initiate going into the temple for his final trading, which is supposedly located inside of the Great Sphinx. And then he's given what they refer to it as is the etherical temple garment. It's a temple garment that is exactly as you described, the etherical temple garment. And this is given to the people that are that go all the way through the initiations of the mystery religions, and then they're put in front of an all-seeing eye that essentially manifests itself as a threat, and the person stands there, the adept stands there with no fear, with their temple garment on, and then they're allowed to become an initiate after that. They're done with their training. So I've found that very interesting. And my question I wanted to ask is, along those lines to you is, have you seen, I mean, because obviously we can sit here and name things like fluoride in the water and MSG and aspartame and all these things that are proven to keep our DNA from resonating at higher frequencies. I'm wondering if you have seen other things that, instead of mitigating this, may actually help this along. Do you have any information pertaining to that?
Well, let me put it this way. There was an oil that was utilized that helped them to create this light garment. When, for example, Enoch was taken to heaven by the archangel Michael, Michael rubs an oil over Enoch's body, and he becomes one of the glorious ones. When you're one of the glorious ones, you glow rays, because that's what the word glow ray or glory.
The shining ones.
The shining ones, right. And so Jesus talked about this oil, and this oil was connected with what was known as the power. The Greek word is exousia. It was a supernatural, kind of a cosmic power. And what's fascinating about this is that the Apostle Paul also talked about this power in connection with Jesus' resurrection, saying that this power that he's asking you to believe in is the same power that God used to resurrect Jesus from the dead. And as I'm following this kind of with the Forrest Gump approach and just sort of following it sort of literally or simply, he's saying that there is a power that gives people mighty strength. And it's the same strength or power that was exerted when Christ was raised from the dead. And Paul clearly says that in order to get this power, you have to have the eyes of your heart awakened or enlightened. And it's an incomparably great power for those who believe. And to me, believe is the key word. And to answer your question, I've been doing research on the placebo effect, in which a pill, a cream, or something that seems to have no known therapeutic value makes us feel better. What most people may not realize is that since the 1980s, the placebo effect has been doubling. The pharmaceutical industry is desperate to know why, because the placebo is beating every single new drug. And it turns out that humans are healing themselves by taking sugar pills and just believing it will do them good. It seems that mind over matter is increasing at this time. The pharmaceuticals can't figure out why, but in the context of our conversation, Josh, it seems that what's happening is that human consciousness is expanding. Our thoughts are things, and they are accelerating. Our thoughts are gaining great power. So if you believe that you are on a path of ascension here, and that you are utilizing these cosmic energies to raise your vibration, you are. Because the effectiveness of the placebo isn't attributed to what's in it. It's the beliefs that we heap on it that make it effective. And so what's literally happening is our minds are creating the medicine. And I'm thinking something like that might have been an effect in the ancient world, that there might have been an oil, but in all possibility, it could have just been the belief of the people that this oil was actually transforming them, and as a result of that, it did. And so what's happening now is that a lot of us, I think, have no doubt noticed that the rate and probably the perception of synchronicity is increasing. There's a perception that linear time flow is speeding up, and so are our thoughts, and our power of belief is also increasing at this time.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And everybody I know says they're experiencing that. And, that was such a great point that you brought up there about, the power of belief and the placebo effect, because, the opposite of that, and sort of what coincides with that to me, is what I was mentioning earlier, is this idea that the people are trying to use that same power to convince us that 2012 is doom and gloom and all the rest of this. And so that power, it's almost as if because that power is accelerating and they know that it is, and you see that as everything ramps up or with global superpowers and more of this stuff tries to lock down the people, I think it's because they have no choice. I think they are aware of the acceleration of consciousness, the shift that is going on. And so the only thing they can do is just really go, put all their cards on the table and go all in because they don't have a chance left. And I think that's a very, very, very important piece of information I hope our listeners take away tonight, is that idea that ultimately it's up to us whether or not we see the doom and gloom into the world scenario, whether or not we live in a utopia is ultimately not going to be up to anybody but us. It's going to be what we manifest.
That's right. It's going to be what we believe is going to be happening at this time, and creating ourselves. And that's why I try to paint as positive a picture as possible for what's transpiring. I mean, I recognize that we're definitely up against the wall, and we could spend 2 minutes here just looking at some of the trends that are out there. I mean, my gosh, you've got Ray Kurzweil out there who's saying we've got till 2045 before these artificially intelligent computers kick in. At the same time, you've got human population will be around 8 billion people at that time. You've got all kinds of a confluence of things here that make it appear as if we're doomed. But at the same time, you look out there and you recognize, wow, we've got this incredibly golden opportunity right now to gather as much knowledge as we possibly can, to share this knowledge, to network with other like-minded and like-hearted people, and actually get to work on what's actually real in our lives, and that is what's our quest for eternity? Where are we going to go from here? And starting to take that really long view and developing ourselves spiritually.
And I think that's absolutely key. And so I want to thank you so much for continuing to put that message out, because there's to me there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of disinformation, there's a lot of stuff that goes on out there, and it's just important that we all be able to focus on what's really important, and then that again is bringing ourselves into an area where we can accept what is going to be happening all around us. Our guest tonight is William Henry. We've got one more segment with him tonight. We're going to take a break right now and come back for our final segment with Mr. Henry tonight on the show. His website is williamhenry.net. That's www.williamhenry.net. So definitely check out his website and all his books and DVDs. There's so much stuff that you can get, and a lot of his presentations are really in-depth and give you a lot more. What you're even getting here on the show tonight is really merely but just a taste of what Mr. Henry puts out. So we'll take a break, come back, and we'll have more with our guest tonight here in just about 6 minutes or so. So stay with us, folks. All right, back here with you on the Global Reality, right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thank you for being with us here tonight for this special presentation with our guest, William Henry, from his website, williamhenry.net. It's williamhenry.net. And definitely check out his website there. He's got videos up there. He's got articles. There's links to his to his events where he gives presentations and lectures. You also have his DVDs up there: Soul Rising, The Awakening, The Transformation, The Ascension. That is 5 hours, 3 discs for $39.95. So that's a really good price because of when you're an independent researcher, you have to pay for the cost of all your films or what you get from your supporters. Sometimes you have to price your DVDs $20, $25. Well, he's got a set here for $39.95, $5 shipping and handling, 5 hours, 3 discs. Definitely check that out there. He's also got other package deals that you can get as well. He's got previews up there. Just a wealth of information that you can get if you're interested to know more in his work. And I'd like to ask Mr. Henry just a kind of on a personal note, from a question for myself. Really, I haven't really asked anything that I'm personally interested in tonight. Just wanted to ask stuff that we could get into with the information. But just kind of curious to know, William, what your primary or more current focus of research is, and if you have any newer areas, newer avenues, and things that you're moving into, or what's really hot on your plate right now.
Good question, Josh. I just gave a new presentation called The Anointed, which is about the subtitle is Living in the Divine Light of the Galactic Heart. And so my primary focus right now is, I talked about the oil a moment ago. What is that oil, and can we get some? Because we sure seem to need it. And it's just continuing to peel back the layers of mystery and application, really, of how do we achieve the light body? How do we put on that ethereal garment we were talking about? Because that, to me, seems to be the goal of all human activity. Is that's what we're here for, is to learn these secrets, to put this light garment on and join this incredible race of beings that travel the cosmos through stargates and wormholes. That's what always ignites my passion, and will continue to until I actually discover those secrets.
Well, I think that's the same thing that keeps me going is the fact that not that we, at this point, not how much we know, but the things that we don't know and the things that we continue to find out. And every day I know that you being a researcher, and it just happens naturally as you become on this path of knowledge. Every day on your path, just by sheer synchronicity, and it's certainly not coincidence, but just because you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing in this life, which is very hard because everything is designed through media and culture and the rest of this to program us to not find our true selves. And once you sort of do try and find your true self, and this has been the case for me now, 4 years doing this show, has been that every single day, new revelations come, new things, new information comes my way. I mean, every day you have a new reason to do this because you realize we have a long way to go, but it is within our grasp if we just don't stop.
It is, and you said a magic word just a moment ago, the true self, be our true selves. That's something I've been including in my presentations a lot for the past year or so. I call it the Trinity. In Gnostic writings, we repeatedly come across three ideas from the ancient world, and that is the idea of the divine spark that we all have within us, this piece of divinity, this spark of light, we literally are made of stardust. We are golden. We all have within us our true self, which they referred to in the ancient world as the messenger of light. It's like we've got this part of ourself that knows everything that's going to happen to us. It can see on down the road. It sits as if it's a invisible passenger in the car seat right beside us, but we've been told by our culture not to listen to that voice of that higher self. But yet many of us can cite an example of a time in our life where we heard that still small voice and it guided us. And I think that if we can connect with that inner messenger of light, that's 9/10 of the whole process of awakening. Then the third part of the Trinity is that this messenger of light actually wants to help you achieve this robe of light, or this garment of glory, this garment of light, and then connect you with what was called the pillar of glory, the column of glory, which is actually a group of these awakened souls that gather together and actually form this conduit, if you will, that links heaven and earth. And in the imagery in the ancient world, in the artwork, the pillar of glory is shown as what we today think of as a stargate or a wormhole. So to recap, it's the divine spark within us. It's that messenger of light that is our true self, that wants to give us this garment of light and connect us with other awakened souls. And when people ask me, well, how do you connect with that garment? Excuse me, how do you connect with that true self, with that messenger of light within you? And I think that it's what you said. It's about getting on this path. That part of ourself is our highest true self. It's the spirit within us. It's the true inner spark, the seed of light that we all carry in it. And the ancients actually teach that it is responsible for growing the human body as a vehicle, ultimately for ascension. And by connecting with it, we learn the secrets of ascension. In fact, I was in Florida once talking about this, and I asked the audience if anybody has ever connected with their higher self, if they've heard that voice and listened to it. And a woman raised her hand and answered the question. She said, well, when I'm in times of conflict or if I'm in times of fear, I know the voice of my higher self because it always asks me the same question. What would you do if you weren't afraid? And that's a message I've since like to leave with people, is to look at your life, and if you're in conflict, if you're in a circumstance where you're uncertain about what to do, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And that's how we open a channel of communication with our higher self, is we peel ourselves away from the fear and recognize that, hey, we truly are unlimited beings, and there is a part of ourself that knows all the answers already. We just have to reveal it to ourselves.
Your inner self starts to reveal itself to you the moment that you start to go forward into the world, into life, without fear.
Exactly. And, I was recently in Denver talking about this, and I also suggested that if you want to connect with your higher self, then start displaying actions in your life that will get its attention. And I direct people to the Christian concept of the fruits of the Holy Spirit, the results of one work. And the fruit of the Holy Spirit is considered to be love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So I'm saying if you want to connect with your higher self, start incorporating acts of love and joy and peace and patience, and kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control into your life, and that part will come online. A gentleman raised his hand and he said, I'm a deacon in the Episcopalian Church, and they teach us that we want to do all of those things, otherwise we're going to hell. And he's saying, what you're saying is that you want to do this because this is the way you're ultimately going to achieve awakened consciousness. He's like, I like your approach to it a lot better.
Absolutely. And, I wanted to say real quick, I had a question here from a listener and an email real quick. Just one I wanted to ask William for. Well, the listener wants to know, it says, hey, Josh, enjoying the show. Thanks for having Mr. Henry on. Well, thanks to him for coming on. And just wanted to know if he has any information pertaining to the possibility of the Ark of the Covenant being a power generator for these stargates.
No, I wouldn't connect the Ark of the Covenant as a power generator for stargates. I mean, it's certainly, we know that it was a communications device, that it transmitted the presence or power of God, sat in the Holy of Holies of the Temple of Solomon, and when that power is being displayed, at least in Christian art, it's shown as a rainbow or an arc, and that does to me connect with the rainbow body, which I believe is the form in which we actually are able to go through the stargates. But I've never actually connected the Ark of the Covenant as a power source for the stargates. Okay,
I think maybe what that's coming from is I think people have talked about radioactivity and stuff like that pertaining to it. So maybe that was the connection they were making. I don't know. But thank you anyway, listener, for the question there. But we've just got about just a few more minutes left here in our interview tonight. I also wanted to give you an opportunity to tell people about where they can catch you out live doing your lectures and what your plans are for that for the future.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've got several events coming up this summer. Headed to Asheville, North Carolina this coming weekend, or actually it's the 17th of April. And beyond that, I'm going to be, let me see here, I've got, actually looking forward to going to England later this summer. But in between then, I'm going to Boston, Massachusetts, the 1st of June. I've got the Dreamland Festival coming back here to Nashville at the end of June. That's with Whitley Strieber, Jim Mars, Linda Moulton Howe. Always a fun weekend. And then I head over to the Summer Crop Circle lectures at the end of July. Alchemy Conference in September in Long Beach, California. That's always an excellent event. And then kind of finish off the year in Tempe, Arizona with Dr. J.J. Hurtak, Raymond Moody, Paul Perry, and others, which is going to be a near-death and after-death presentation with the focus for me on the connection between the near-death experience and the possibility that the bright white light that people see in the near-death experience is actually a wormhole.
Well, that's excellent stuff. And I want to ask you real quick before we end the show here. I want to get your take on because I'd heard various things about this, and I've just heard conflicting information. I've heard one end of it, and some people saying it's good, some people saying it's bad. But I wanted to get your take on the substance known as monoatomic gold.
Yeah, I always encourage people to stay as far away from that as they possibly can, because I think there's a tremendous amount of fraud going on in that area. Some of it could well be legitimate, but I think the basis of it, the foundation of it, is really pretty bogus. And I just don't like people putting stuff that they don't know enough about in their mouth. And just encourage people to stay away from that. Yeah,
I have to agree with that, because for me, it's my research is pointing me in the direction that this is something that may be tricking people into taking, so that it actually may keep us from reaching ascension and coming into light bodies and stuff like that. So I wanted to definitely say thanks to you for addressing that, because that was a question I'd had from the listening audience. So So there you go. But Mr. Henry, I want to thank you so much for coming on with us tonight, and I hope we're able to do this again, and maybe we can have an event sometime and get you here in Dallas, Texas.
I would love to do that. We'll take a tour of Thanksgiving Square. We'll talk all about Stargates and Ascension and Transformation. That would be absolutely phenomenal.
Well, I'll definitely be in touch with you, and maybe we can, because I'm going to be having a premiere in Dallas at some point for my new film that I'm working on. So maybe we can have a joint event for that and try to get you out here.
I would very much look forward to that, Josh, and I've certainly enjoyed our conversation this evening. You keep up the great work. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. There goes William Henry, ladies and gentlemen. He's our guest tonight. WilliamHenry.net is his website. It's WilliamHenry.net. You go there and check out all his films and books and everything else. What a great interview. I thank so much for having him on. Thanks to Nick for facilitating getting him on. And I may be back for a Moonbat show tonight, and maybe I'll probably just maybe do some reading from Bramley or something like that. But I don't know. We'll just have to see. But nonetheless, great show. Thanks to everybody for tuning in tonight. Please support our work, folks, so we can continue to bring you great guests like William Henry. We're going to have William Bramley on the show with us on the 18th. And donations have been kind of slack lately, so we need some help. Use the donate button if you can, and support our work, please, folks, so we can continue, okay? We need your support right now. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. My name is Josh Reeves. I love each and every one of you. We'll see you next time for the broadcast. You guys take care. Have a great night.